Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. This is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned for family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic, food and national security. If you've been with me for a little while now, you probably know how much I care about our food, specifically the government's involvement in our food. I'm not one I'm not someone who is obsessed with food and health, and I'm not like this vegan or on these special diets or any of that stuff. That's not where I stand. All I want is access to real food, and I encourage purchasing ingredients rather than packaged or prepackaged foods and processed items. I promote using food as fuel and medication rather than an antidepressant or something that's just there. You ever heard the saying, you eat to live versus living to eat? I am the eat to live person. So I'm not someone who's going to tell you to, eat only vegetables and don't eat red meat and all those other crazy things. And if that's what you do and that works for you, great. However, that's not where I am. I just believe that we should eat real food, that we should eat the foods that our great grandparents ate that lived to be hundreds of years old. We need to go back to that. I am anti processed foods altogether. And in the past, I discussed these issues with our food, but I also provided ways to eat healthy during difficult times. Because the fact of the matter is, we shouldn't have a society where if you don't make a certain amount of money, you can't afford to be healthy. Everyone can afford to be healthy. Produce costs a lot less than processed foods. So there is a way to be healthy no matter where you are financially. Well, I feel a lot better about the direction of our food in this food crisis, but I'm not sure how mentally aware we are of the national security threat that is associated with eating this food and eating bad food and being unhealthy in this country. So today we are going to connect the two, starting with what has changed recently. So, thanks to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the MAHA moms and dads, which are the Make America Healthy Again moms and dads, if you haven't been following along, let me fill you in on what happened with RFK. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. So RFK Jr. is making waves because he called for a new set of food guidelines. And honestly, I feel like it's just about time. He's advocating for a focus on whole foods, organic choices, and a serious reduction in our reliance on processed or ultra processed foods. So in other words, those foods that are more chemical based versus nourishment based. So for the first time, the US dietary guidelines are warning us against highly processed foods and recommending zero sugar, zero added sugars, especially when it comes to our kids. So let's get real for a moment. We've created generations of people who are addicted to sugar while pushing these low protein, high carbohydrate diets. And the pyramid before it was recently flipped upside down, which it needed to be, placing the meats and the vegetables at the top, but in small portions, and having breads and carbs at the bottom, and significantly more portions on our plates. That is the way the pyramid was prior to RFK coming in and flipping it. So now we're eating more fruits and vegetables according to his guideline and less of the breads and carbs, where that was the opposite prior to him flipping it. So the guidelines, they are updated every 5 years and they influence dozens of federal food programs, ultimately shaping the meals of our military and our school children. And the updated guideline is supported by the American Medical Association. They stated that they affirm that food is medicine, and it gives a clear direction for patients and doctors alike to improve health. Because something I found out is that unless you're going to a holistic doctor, a integrative specialist, or someone of that nature, most of our Western doctors have no idea about what type of foods we should be eating or how we should eat. They're not nutritionists. They are there to help keep you alive. In most cases, they are prescribing medication to do the job of food. And so when you now have a guideline from the federal side, now our doctors who may know more about nutrition but don't have the freedom to share it, or those who don't know about it, now they're able to incorporate nutrition and talk more about it, and it helps them to be better doctors. So that's good. Now, according to RFK, let's talk about alcohol. Because according to the old guidelines, they would say no more than one drink a day for women and two drinks a day for men. However, under this new edition, he simply urges us to consume less. So RFK personally suggests no drinking alcohol at all, but he's not putting a guideline on it. He's like, look, just consume less. Don't be an overconsumption when it comes to alcohol. Have more control over your intake. And so that's under the new guideline. So this is huge. This is a huge step in the right direction, but it must include a education component, in my opinion. So like, for instance, here's my tip. Don't eat more than the serving size on the carton. Most people don't even pay attention to the serving sizes on the cartons. But look at how much everything that they're telling you is in this. If they say this is 21% of your daily value of sodium, and you have to, and the serving size is, two cookies a day or something, do not eat five. Just pay attention to it, right? So try your best to stay within the serving size. You won't be perfect, but just try your best. Here's another tip. Don't buy it if it has more than a handful of ingredients and you don't know what some of those ingredients mean. So if you're looking at it and you're just like, it has only 5 ingredients. However, all those 5 ingredients are chemical based, or they are these long words that I can't explain or I can't understand. At least Google what you're eating. At least look it up. And I'm not saying Google's the answer, but at least do a little bit of research prior to just ingesting it. So, look at that. If you can't read it, put it back on the shelf. If you went in doubt, don't buy it, right? Here's another one. Don't get anything that has added sugar. Most foods already has sugar in it. And so they may say it has 8 grams of sugar, and then right below it, you'll see where it says added sugar, and the added sugar is like 15%. You don't want we don't need added sugar. Just eat the sugar that's in the meal without adding any additional sugar on top. A lot of times they do that to help preserve the food, which sugar is a better preserver and salt is a better preserver than these chemicals. However, you still don't want to over consume it. And lastly, eat your carbs and sugars last during a meal. Just do the old school. You know how your parents say eat your vegetables first. Go back to that. Eat vegetables first, then eat your protein, then eat your carbs and your sugars. Dessert is always the last meal, right? The last portion of your meal. Keep it that way. And that's easy enough, right? Like that, those are just simple things that I think you can do. Well, but not quite. I do think that we have to go a step further when it comes to the federal side. So those are tips and things that you can do in your personal life. But I do have more requirements from our federal government, since they are now involved in this and they are paying attention. I personally believe that we have to bring food production 100% back to America. Did you know that a significant amount of our pork that we purchase in grocery stores come from China? And what about chocolate and coffee and many of our fruits? They come from places all around the world. And I'm not against trade. However, when it comes to our food, if we don't have a federal government that is adequately looking and researching and making sure that this food that's coming in meets these high bar guidelines, then we have a problem. If we are allowing other countries to ship us foods that are not good for us and we are not saying anything about it, especially when we allow fruits and vegetables or foods or any type of product into this country that's not allowed in other countries, we have a problem. So I don't think we are, or we have been watching it too close enough for me to say that I feel comfortable getting a bunch of food from other countries. So I personally would like to see food production come back to America. I also think it helps us as a country to be able to sustain ourselves when we are self producing. What happens if were to go to war, God forbid, with China? And they now withhold protein from us, or the fact that they're buying up so much farmland. What happens when they now own all this farmland so we can't even farm in our own country to feed our own people, and we have another foreign entity that is all up in our food production process? So that is a problem for me. What does that mean for national security? And should we get rid of processed foods altogether and bring food back to America? Well, I am going to discuss all of that right after the break. So we are just getting started. Don't leave the table. This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Ingredients: sugar, corn syrup, hydrogenated palm kernel oil.
Trina Rose is not only a busy mom trying to serve the healthiest foods possible to her 4 kids, but also a hospital wellness coordinator.
Are you just surprised that there are products sold legally in the U.S. but have ingredients that are banned in other countries?
Kind of surprised and kind of not. I think we do fast, cheap, and easy in America and kind of everything in excess.
So what are we talking about? Skittles, Pop-Tarts, Gatorade. Oh, and those yummy Little Debbies. Banned in the European Union because of dyes like Yellow 5, Yellow 6, and Red 40. The EU banned these artificial colors after scientific research indicated they could be harmful to health, especially to young children.
We do allow GMOs here, but in most of Europe, they don't.
Amanda Deering, an associate professor at Purdue's job is food safety.
I could see how that would be alarming, that, how come Europe doesn't allow something that we eat every day? Mm-hmm. And I could see the concern, but I think too, it's all about how much of that chemical that could actually cause illness.
Coffee Mate, Ritz crackers, those warm, buttery Pillsbury biscuits, all banned in Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Iceland, Norway, and Denmark because of trans fats like partially hydrogenated soybean and cottonseed oils. Wheat thins and cereals like Frosted Flakes banned in the United Kingdom, Japan, and parts of Europe because of a chemical called BHT, a flavor enhancer.
The foods we eat are tested in laboratories like this one on the Purdue campus every day.
But we would talk farm or factory. Like, did it come from a farm or a factory? And if it came from a factory, it probably wasn't very healthy for us. And we talk about closest to the source, so try to eat foods in their most natural state.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is food and national security. So before the break, we discussed the big moves that was happening in our government, and we addressed some of the issues with our food. So I want to continue the conversation by expanding the topic to national security and why I believe that having a country where all the people are fat, sick, and addicted to sugar is a heck of a national security threat as a whole. Because there are so many who see how these changes will make us healthy as a society, but I don't know who else is considering the national security benefits of now making us healthier. So let's just start with some statistics. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. 42.4% of adults in the United States are classified as obese, according to the CDC. 42%. It's almost half. That's crazy. Particularly when I was growing up as a young girl, and I can talk to people who are much older than me, and you should too if you're not one of those people listening. But there was a time when it was hard to find a fat person. Like most people were thin. And so now, not only are we allowing people to be obese and we're just acting like this is okay, even though we see that they're extremely unhealthy, but we're now calling it fat shaming or, a fat phobia if you have a problem with other people being unhealthy. That is sick. And I don't mean it and as a, I mean, it's mentally sick. So I absolutely think that this is a problem if 42% of our adults in the United States are classified as obese. That's not to mention children. Amongst children and adolescents ages 2 to 19, the obesity prevalence is around 20%. And you're wondering, how are children obese when they can run around outside? What's happening? Processed foods. When it comes to chronic diseases, about 6 in 10 adults in the United States have at least one chronic disease, such as heart disease, diabetes, or obesity-related conditions. That 6 in 10, that means that I would venture to say that majority of people, if not everyone, knows somebody or is the person that has a chronic disease. That is absurd. And cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, accounting for about 697,000 deaths just in 2020. Heart disease. You know what cardiovascular disease is? It's heart disease. What affects the heart? All these things: diabetes, obesity, excessive sugar, excessive salt, like all this stuff. The average American consumes more than 17 teaspoons of added sugar per day, far exceeding the recommended limit of 6 teaspoons for women and 9 teaspoons for men. And I would even say that that feels like a lot. But 17 a day? That is, oh my gosh. And this is according to the American Heart Association. Nearly 26% of adults reported no leisure time or physical activity. And get this, for children, it's a little more than 80% do not meet the recommended 60 minutes of physical activity each day. More than 80% of our children is not active at least 1 hour in a day. You remember when your parents used to say, go outside and play? Now, mind you, my mom was a little different. She was a little different. She didn't let me go outside and play a whole lot. She was very concerned about me getting scars on my legs. So God bless my mom. She's a girly girl. She raised a girly girl. That being said, we did do activities in the house, or when we were outside, she did let me do certain things. I did get to ride a bike and I was doing things like that, but I wasn't climbing trees, like the boys. But imagine having children who literally sit on their behinds all day. How is that even good for their mental health? Well, let's talk about it, because when it comes to mental health, we're looking at an estimated 1 in 5 adults experience mental health issues. And I think that is going to increase as these children grow up, because they're not working out that energy. They're not doing the stuff that they need to be doing right now. And only 1 in 10 adults meet the federal fruit and vegetable recommendations, indicating poor dietary habits and a lack of nutritional intake. If you are in the donut line right now getting a donut, get out of that line. Leave Krispy Kreme now. No, I'm not trying to shame, but think about it. Think about what you're doing. If you're grabbing a donut and coffee the first thing in the morning for breakfast, without any fiber, no protein, you're just pumping sugar, shooting your glucose up and out of control. Got to think about these things. So yes, these stats are absolutely alarming, and it certainly explains why we need to make these changes. But it also highlights a glaring national security threat. What does it mean when the American citizens are all fat, overweight, and sick? What does this mean? whether you're obese or you're heading in that direction. But if we're all fat and sick, it means that we can't defend ourselves from attacks. It means that when you have brain fog for having and eating all this from eating all this increased sugar, we're not mentally prepared to make hard decisions. It means that we are more willing to trade our freedom for comfort because we're addicted to food. And it's like, oh my God, I can't have my chips. Well, I don't know. The emotional breakdown that occurs when trying to break free from sugar. Sugar, in my opinion, is a real addiction. And I know because I personally was like that. I love sugar. I love snacks. I love pastries and all the other stuff. And thank God I married a man who hates sugar. Well, he'll eat every once in a while, but he's not a sugar guy. And it helped me to really see how much I was ingesting. And even now, I always tell everybody that I'm a recovering sugar addict. I act like I was recovering from alcohol because you have to treat it that way. It's a real thing, guys. So changing our food guidelines and encouraging our people to get healthier strengthens our country. But it isn't enough to recognize a problem. You have to fix the problem from within. Because if you tell people to eat better, but then we're shipping in food that's not good. So in other words, telling us to eat less sugar and more protein and vegetables, while a significant portion of those foods and those food items are coming from other countries, that can pose a problem as well. All right, so let's break down something that might surprise you. Let's break this down because I know some of you are probably like, wait, Janelle, what are you talking about? So did you know that a good chunk of our pork that we consume here in America comes from China? That's right. In recent years, China has become one of the world's largest exporters of pork. China. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not that we in America don't produce a lot of pork here right at home. But those imports can swing based on demand and supply chain factors. So when a grocery store has to choose from a cheaper China product of pork over local farmers, you probably know how that's going to end up. The grocery store does not have a responsibility to make sure you eat healthy. And a grocery store's responsibility is not to make sure that every product on the shelf is organic. Their job is to make sure that there is something on the shelf for everybody. And we have to be clear. For those who say processed foods need to go away completely, I don't agree with that. Because I do believe that in order for America, and this is something my husband helped me to see, in order for America to stay a country where we don't have a lot of starvation, then we have to have options that are cheaper. And ultimately, products that can stay on the shelf for a very long time, that can be packaged and easily shipped out and things of that nature, that those type of products are products that help us to stay above the starvation line. However, when you become addicted to those products, right? When all you eat are those products, that then hurts you. But the grocery store, the responsibility does not fall on the grocery store. So we have to keep that in mind. So they are not bad for wanting to get what's cheaper so that they can make a profit and so they can make sure that their shelves stay full. And that they're not losing money by throwing away a lot of stuff. That's why the produce section seems to be getting smaller and smaller. But while we have food safety regulations in place to govern these imports, it's still something that we should be aware of. So take fresh produce like bananas and avocado. Many of them come from places like Ecuador or Mexico. And when it comes to our seafood, a sizable amount is imported from countries like Thailand and China. Even our beloved snacks like our chips and our frozen meals and all that stuff that often have ingredients sourced from all over the globe. Even our coffee. The coffee we enjoy on a daily basis, or I should say you enjoy, because I'm not a coffee drinker, I'm a tea drinker. However, coffee and even teas that we enjoy can come from other countries like Brazil, Colombia, Vietnam. And chocolate lovers, come to the table. All of us, come sit down. because most of our favorite treats that are made of cocoa beans are grown in West African countries like Ghana. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not saying this is all bad. I'm just making you aware. So let's not forget about olive oils, right? We love a good olive oil. And I personally look for olive oils that come from Italy personally. So I'm not saying we're anti-trade, like I said before. However, we need to be aware. Many of the brands that are on the shelves come from Italy, Spain, or Greece when it comes to your olive oils. And now let's look at our fruits, right? So like oranges, because remind you, we're not in California. California has the weather. That's great. And I'm so glad that they can, produce oranges there. But that's only like one portion of the country that allows that to happen. So oftentimes our oranges will come from Mexico or South Africa, especially during these off seasons when it's cold. Not to mention, while the government wants you to feel good about your food because of these regulations, many of our policies open the door for bad actors in allowing stuff like genetically modified foods. So GMO is something that you should look for. I should have added that in my tip, that if you see this is a GMO product, don't do it. In most cases, I don't see them promote it, but I do see where they'll notate that this is a non-GMO product. I say get anything that says non-GMO as long as it meets the other criteria that I mentioned. But GMO, which stands for genetically modified organism, refers to crops that have had their genetic material altered in a lab. This is done to introduce specific traits like resistance to pests or herbicides, which can lead to bigger yields as well as lower production costs. So this is just a way to make their product, their produce go further. So opposed to organic food items. So I say look for organic, buy organic. Organic food is produced without the use of synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, or GMOs. It focuses more so on the natural process and sustainability, meaning farmers are working with nature rather than against it to be certified organic. A farm has to meet strict federal guidelines, which means they're all about promoting biodiversity and protecting soil health, which is great. But I want to make sure that this administration focuses more on the food quality and less on the emotions of the animals or the comfort of the fruit trees. These trees, these animals have been living in this society for a long time. So I personally am like, let's make sure the food quality is better than, just all the other stuff. Anyway, but let's not just focus on a GMO and organic, because there are other things you have to look out for. So let's just say you find a product and you're like, okay, it's non-GMO, but it's also not organic. Let's not forget about these synthetic dyes. A lot of the colorful foods that we see in stores are packaged with artificial colors that can make products look appealing, but they pose health risks. I know that RFK has put a ban on, I think it was Yellow 5 and what was the other one? Maybe it was like a red or a green. I don't remember the number combo, but I know he did put a ban on some of these dyes. And many other countries have these strict regulations that outright bans these type of additives while we're still using them here in the United States. Well, we were. Thank God that I think RFK did do something about that. And I saw that, I think was it Kellogg's is one of the companies. Don't quote me on that, but there is a company that produces cereal that is going to start using natural color, natural fruit flavors. So it's not going to taste the same. Because if you've ever tasted a black currant fruit gummy bear versus a purple gummy bear, it tastes a little different, okay? But it's not bad. You just taste more fruity and less sugary. So while our American policies may support these practices to make food production more efficient, we need to think about what it means for our health and our environment. It's a call for, in my opinion, to be more informed consumers who pay attention to what's in our food and support practices that are better for all of us. Unfortunately, I can continue on and continue talking about all the things that we need to do because there's so much to think about. And it's not just what to eat. Although it certainly kickstarts us in the right direction, we also have to keep in mind all of these things. And these are the real risks that I believe we face, and we rely way so too much on imported foods. So first up, we've got food safety concerns. This is why I have issues with us importing so much of our food. When our food travels thousands and thousands of miles, it can get contaminated before it even reaches our plates. And we're talking about lessening nutrition, at the very least, and we're talking about food poisoning and the risk of food poisoning at the worst, at worst. So when we have food that's traveling so far, like the moment you pluck a vegetable out the ground, it immediately starts to lose its nutrients. It's connected from the source. So that's the most nutrients you're gonna get when you first pluck it out. That's why if you do have a garden, it's great to just kind of grab your carrot out and bite it or something. But that's the most you're gonna get. Over time, it's just gonna continue to lose its, nutrients. And that's not something that we can afford to ignore. Then there's supply chain disruptions. Just think about it, right? If anything was to happen, from natural disasters to political tensions, which we've seen with some of these tariffs, it can mess up the flow of goods, and a crisis hits. And that means empty grocery shelves. And nobody wants that, because we know that can lead to anarchy. And when you are a country like America, who has a populace that relies on grocery stores, and many of us have never grown food of our own, a supply chain crisis can send us into a frenzy. And let's not forget about economic vulnerabilities. Relying on foreign sources can hurt our local farmers and producers. And if we keep looking outside our borders for food, we risk losing those local businesses that are essential to our communities, the businesses that will ultimately sustain us if we did run into a food crisis. We need them to be around. We need our local farmers to be around. Let's be clear. If we're not careful, we could see rising food prices. Supply chain issues can lead to higher costs, making it much harder for families to put food on their table, which we're kind of seeing right now. So, as convenient as it may seem, depending heavily on imported foods, it comes with some serious risk. And it's time to think about local support. American farmers, when we can use them, use them. Find your local place, which I'm going to help you with. It's better for our health, it's better for our economy, and the future of our country. So what should we be doing in the meantime? As the administration attempts to right their wrongs, we're going to talk about what we should be doing while we are waiting on all of this, right after the break. You're listening to the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. Don't leave the table.
If somebody were to buy a bag of Lay's potato chips versus buying it in Europe and look at the ingredients, they're totally different. They will make the healthier version for another country. There's over 10,000 food chemicals that are allowed in the American population or food system that aren't allowed in other countries. It makes it easier for food companies, gives them longer shelf life because they're putting so many chemicals in. So anytime we lobby for healthier food choices in our school systems, in our neighborhood, the food industry is going right behind them with billions and millions of dollars saying, no, we can't do that.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is food and national security, to be exact. If you missed majority of the show, don't you worry. You can catch an encore episode at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, or you can go to my YouTube page right after you listen to the closer, or right now, to the show and listen from the beginning. And then every Tuesday, we drop a podcast, and we drop right here on the Extras Podcast Park, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. But what you just heard was a little information about why this topic is so important. because it's not enough to just change how we eat. It's about how the food we are consuming is prepared and processed. That matters just as much as what we eat. We have to bring our food source back to America. But until then, what can you do now to avoid eating food that is not good and that is produced outside the country? Well, I think you should start with looking around and seeing what you are working with. If you're in an area where there are only grocery stores, I have found that Sprouts is a great option, considering quality and affordability. I feel like it's definitely a little bit more expensive, but it's not, in my opinion, as expensive as a Whole Foods or a Publix, but they do have good quality products. But what I do like about it is that I typically can find things that I like to eat that I normally have bought in grocery stores. I typically can find an alternative that has better product in it, better ingredients, if I have to purchase off the shelf. But I'm lessening my purchasing off the shelf, and I'm purchasing more of ingredients, so not prepackaged stuff. But if you can find a local farmer's market, that's another win. And a little from Sprouts and a little bit from the farmer's market, I think that's a good way to do it, right? So if you were to get things that you have to purchase that are, prepackaged because, you just are, we're weaning off, right? So I think going to Sprouts is great. And then I feel like following up by finding a local farmer's market is also good. You can drive around. I know in the Sandy Springs area of Georgia, we have a little mini farmer's market that is near Chick-fil-A off of, I think it's Jet Ferry Road. So they pop up every once in a while. If you're driving down the road and you just see it, pull over there, see what they have, grab some of their tomatoes. If anything, we want them to continue doing that. If you have some rural connections or you live in rural, most of the people who live in rural Georgia or rural parts of the country, they tend to have a good grip on where they get their protein and stuff because they have relationships with farmers that's nearby. But if you have some rural connections, see if you can find a local farmer who's selling like a half a hog or cow or some type of portions, right? Like a fourth of the cow or something. Go in with family and friends to purchase it, and it'll last you for a very, very long time. My husband purchases a half a hog for our house every year, just about, or I think it lasts about a year and a half for just the two of us. So, you know, but it's so much cheaper per pound, and you know that we're getting good quality food. We know the people who are raising these animals, and we know what they're feeding them. So that's something that I definitely recommend. If you can get your protein directly from a farm and you can ask what the animal is being fed, then you're in the money. You need to do that. I definitely recommend that. And there are several sites that can help you find a local farm near you. One is called eatwild.com, and I'll put these in the description box as well. And the other is called localharvest.com, and then there's farmersmarketcoalition.com as well. And these are all a few to help you get started. So if you are, listening, just check at the end of the show. You can look into the description box and you'll see these links to these websites. If you're in a position to start a small garden at your home, do it. At least begin the trial and error portion of gardening, because, while it doesn't matter as much right now, I think it's fun to begin the process. So when I met my husband, he has the green thumb. Like, I do believe that some people just have it, right? I mean, he'll tell you just water it, but it's more than that to me. But watching things grow or being a part of it or seeing what you have to do in order to maintain it, all of that stuff, you can start practicing that now while we're not in a food crisis, so that if something was to happen, you won't be completely oblivious. And after you have stabilized your family and your fridge, I want you to start looking up some of these preservatives. So once you've already created something where you're like, all right, I'm going to Sprouts here, I found a local farmer's market, or I found a local farm, and I'm stabilized now. Start looking up some of these preservatives that have been linked to cancer and other illnesses, and write your congressperson in the USDA and ask them to look into it and address these issues. I shout out to the Maha people, the Maha families, and shout out to Gen Zers who have said, eating unhealthy is no longer cool. Thank God they did that because it put pressure to start paying attention to these things. We have to remember that this country is special. It is special for several reasons. One being that we have a lot of citizens who carry weapons, and that has served as a deterrent from other countries who wish to come into our country, particularly under the element of surprise, because that means that if they drop into our country, they're going to have to fight citizens as well as the military. So that's been great, and that's been a great deterrent. But it means nothing if we're all sick and dependent. It means nothing if we're afraid that we're going to lose the comforts when we're start negotiating with these enemies rather than fighting them. This country is not going to maintain itself, and our land is just too precious. We must do all that we can to preserve this country, and it starts with maintaining personal health. Until next time, stay unafraid.